Hey friend, please subscribe. 1 second for you. Big deal for me.
The flames caught faster than my brain did. 1 second, we were blasting music and cracking beers in the Ojai Hills like we owned them. Next second, smoke curled up from the deck railing, and everyone backed off like the fire had teeth. I was 22, still at Cal State Channel Islands, still living on my dad's money, credit, and patience. And that patience? It burned down with the rest of it. It started with the dumbest spark. A firecracker someone had stripped open and lit for fun, not even a real one. But it hit a dry pile of leaves, and the railing went up like kindling. The wind did the rest. Flames danced like they knew where to go, and we helped them, spraying hoses like idiots, shouting over each other, soaking all the wrong spots. We called 911, but by then, the flames were halfway around the house. It was like watching your future collapse in fast forward. Before we start, tell us which city or country you're listening from. Let's see which corners of the world we've gathered from today. Thanks. And now the story. My name is Alan Butler. I lived like rules were for other people, like I was invincible. I wasn't. The next morning, the real damage wasn't even the charred frame of my dad's off-limits getaway house. It was a clip, 15 seconds, posted on someone's Instagram story, showing me laughing while the fire crackled behind me. I didn't even know who filmed it. I got tagged, then untagged, but it was too late. Everyone saw it. Someone sent it to my dad. Insurance called him before I could. They asked too many questions. Who brought fireworks? Was alcohol provided? Was the property authorized for use? I shut my mouth and took the hit. I wasn't naming names. Dad didn't yell. That's the thing with Daxton Butler. His version of fury was silence. That slick, cold Westlake Village kind of calm that made your stomach twist. He just looked at me and said, "You're done. No credit cards, no cash, no apartment, no freedom." He drove me in silence to an ADU behind one of his warehouses in Oxnard. The place looked like a shack with a door and smelled like metal and mildew. My stepmom, Mariana, stood in the doorway, holding a tote bag and trying not to cry. She whispered, "I tried." But Dad ignored it. He handed me a single-typed sheet, my new Bible. Checklist, weekly report, shift hours logged, budget, pay stubs. You bring plans, I match funds. You bring excuses, I shut the door. I laughed, like an idiot, said I'd be fine. He didn't laugh back. The door shut behind him like a verdict. I stood there with my duffel bag, my ego still pretending it could get me out of this, and my whole world smoked down to one burnt-out house and zero backup plan. The first morning in the ADU, I woke up pissed off at everything. The hard floor under the mattress, the rattling mini-blind that wouldn't stay down, and the sound of a diesel truck backing in at exactly 6:10 in the morning, like it was parked in my skull. The shower ran brown for a full 10 seconds, which gave me enough time to question every life choice that got me there. I stood there under lukewarm water with my pride in one duffel bag, pretending I wasn't completely lost. A text buzzed through while I dried off with a towel that smelled like storage. Dad. One line. Sundays 4 p.m. Progress review. Warehouse office. No greeting. No punctuation besides the periods. Might as well have been a summons. Then Mariana sent one. I'll drop a casserole Thursdays. That's all I'm allowed. It hit different coming from her, like she was trying to slip a note through prison glass. I still had classes in Camarillo, but no car. Tried Uber for a few days until my bank account curled up and died. You don't know what lunch costs until you have to count the change before you order. I started skipping meals and pretending I was fasting for clarity. I hit job boards hard. The only thing harder was the wall I slammed into. Everything said, experience required. For what? Pouring coffee? Stacking boxes? The one time I got a call back, it was for an unpaid marketing internship in a storage closet. I called everybody I had left. Most of them gave me the same line. Their parents knew a guy. The guy never knew me. Didn't care to. River Kellen finally picked up. He was my one-day one friend, the kind who didn't judge, just offered a next move. He said, I'm working nights at a shop in Ventura. Not glamorous. We wrench, clean, run deliveries. Come shadow me. You'll learn. I told him I wasn't cut out for mechanic work. He laughed through the speaker. You're not, but you can be a go-getter. You like control? Learn how the clock punches back. Show up. That's the job. So I did. I showed up at 7:02 in the evening for a 7 o'clock shift, wearing the wrong shoes and an attitude I thought I'd grown out of. The foreman was a thick, necklace guy named Kyle with a goatee and the posture of a man always in pain. He pointed to a broom and an oil pan without saying a word. Then he barked, "Start with Bay 4, and if you clock late, clock honest. Write it down." I checked the wall clock, 7:06, and snapped a photo just to be safe. Wrote it in my beat-up spiral notebook like it mattered. The shop smelled like hot rubber and solvent. The air pulsed with fans, compressors, and metal-on-metal clinks. I moved toward Bay 4 and froze when I saw her. Nicole Adams, people called her Nikki, was halfway under a red Mazda, hair tied up, grease on her cheek, socket wrench in hand like she was born holding it. She was the quiet one from econ lecture. I'd made a dumb joke about her thrift store hoodie once. She didn't look up then, and she didn't look up now. River nudged me with an elbow. "That's Nikki. She runs this half of the shop. Don't walk into her drip line, and don't under any circumstance touch her torque wrench." I nodded. Got the message. Kyle dropped a folded paper on a metal stool and pointed again. "Your list. Start here. Wipe down the shelves in Bay 2, tag the parts with color codes, log new inventory numbers, and run a calzone to Joe across the yard. He doesn't like it cold. Time log starts now. Write it." I didn't ask questions, just nodded, took the list, and got moving. The calzone run made me sweat like I was running contraband. The guy across the yard didn't say a word, just took the food and slammed the door. Back inside, I tripped over an air hose and almost kissed the floor. Nicole glanced up just long enough to say, "Watch your step. Bleeding on the floor gets you benched." Not a joke, not angry, just pure fact. I wiped shelves until my shoulders locked up, then tagged boxes with shaky hands. My shirt clung to my back like a second skin. When I finally logged the last part number, it was past 10. I hadn't sat down once. River passed by with a box of brake pads. "Still think you're not built for it?" "I still think that," I muttered. He smirked. "Good. The ones who think they're built for it usually quit first." The shift ended without ceremony. Kyle pointed at the broom again. I swept the bays like my life depended on it. Maybe it did. That night, I got back to the ADU, collapsed on the mattress, and stared at the ceiling while my back buzzed with soreness. I opened my notebook and wrote one line under the date. 7:06 to 11:42. Sweep, log, deliver, don't quit. I wasn't sure who I was writing it for, but I wrote it anyway. By the third shift, the shop had its own rhythm, like a busted orchestra held together with box fans and caffeine. Every corner hummed with noise, ratchets clicking, compressors coughing, somebody yelling about a missing gasket. I moved fast, trying to stay out of the way but still be seen working. Nicole handed me a stack of rags without breaking stride and muttered, "Brake dust is not glitter. Don't breathe it in." I didn't answer. I'd breathed worse things in worse places, but this wasn't the time to flex. I just nodded, wiped my hands, and kept moving. River pulled me aside near the break room and tapped on a beat-up delivery phone mounted to the wall. "This is your lifeline," he said. "Late-night parts runs to a couple vendors. Sometimes food drops if the shop's quiet. We get tipped. You need tips." He scrolled through a list of names and routes. "Don't skip the hot bag. Don't take longer than 40 minutes. And don't forget to log the mileage." He grinned like he was showing me the keys to something important. Maybe he was. Back in the main bay, I stared at the wall-sized parts board. It had magnets with names, order numbers, and what looked like a color-coded system. I joked, "Is this fantasy football for car nerds?" Kyle glanced over, chewing a pen cap. "No, this is like your rent, rich kid." That one landed. I shut up and started copying the order codes into a notebook. That night, I stacked filters, labeled brake fluid cases, jogged 2 lots over to find a missing part order that had been misdelivered, and got told 3 times to move faster. By hour 4, my shirt stuck to my back like duct tape. My calves ached in ways I hadn't felt since high school gym. Nicole finally spoke again around 10, voice flat as always. "You're the guy from Econ who laughs too loud, right?" I nodded, catching my breath. "Clock your time right. Kyle shortens lazy clocks." Then she rolled back under the Mazda like the conversation never happened. Second night in, she waved me over with a parts invoice. "Match these numbers to the order sheet." I looked at the stack and groaned. "That's tedious." She didn't blink. "That's money. You mess it up, Kyle sends the wrong part, and the car sits for a day. Mistakes cost more than pride." She walked off before I could answer. I spent the next 40 minutes matching every number with a kind of nervous panic I hadn't felt since trying to cheat my way through a chem lab. That night, back at the ADU, I opened my busted old laptop. The screen flickered like it needed CPR, but it worked. I started a spreadsheet. Nothing fancy, just hours, tasks, mileage, gas, food, tips. I didn't know what I was tracking yet. It looked like a school project for a life I didn't even want. But I filled it anyway. Sundays at 4 became the new dread zone. I'd walk into the warehouse office with a printed sheet from my laptop, hands a little sweaty, pretending it meant something. Dad would sit across from me like a bank manager, red pen in hand. "This line's blank. Where's Thursday's hours?" I told him I forgot to log them. He pointed again. $18.75 on tacos? That's a food budget, not a lifestyle. He never raised his voice. He just stared at me like he could see through my shirt into every half-baked excuse I hadn't even spoken yet. I started skipping the tacos. Made sandwiches instead. After the 3rd week, I scheduled a meeting with an academic advisor. I dropped one elective and moved a lab to a morning slot, just so I could work extra shifts at the shop. I wasn't proud of it. I was just tired of watching money slide out of my hands faster than I could earn it. Then Mariana showed up. It was a Thursday night. I came back to the ADU to find a foil pan on the step and a sticky note. "Mac and cheese. Real cheese. Eat it warm. M." She didn't knock, didn't wait, just left it and drove off. She never stayed long. I knew why. Dad drew lines like they were made of concrete, and she followed them like gospel. That pan fed me for 3 days. I scraped it clean with the last spoon I hadn't broken in the sink. After one shift, I went to Econ still smelling like solvent and baked rubber. Sat in the back, hoping no one noticed. The professor was doing a section on sunk cost. How bad decisions shouldn't trap you into worse ones just because you already paid. He said, "The longer you throw good money after bad, the deeper you bury yourself." That line sat heavy. I opened my notebook and scribbled, "I am the sunk cost." Then I crossed it out. Back at the shop that night, I didn't ask for easier work. I stayed late and mopped the whole floor. Nicole passed by, paused just a second, then said, "You clock that?" I said I would. Kyle watched from across the bay and didn't say a word, but he didn't stop me either. And that was the first shift that didn't break me. It didn't feel like a win, but it didn't feel like a loss either. The next morning started like any other. Noise, heat, and the smell of brake cleaner. But my phone buzzed with a Santa Barbara number while I was logging bolts in the back room. I almost let it ring out, but something in my gut said, "Pick up." The voice on the other end was clipped and professional. "Mr. Butler, this is the adjuster assigned to the Ojai case. We need clarity on the unauthorized event. We've seen the video clip." I braced myself against a shelf. "I know the one. We need names. The clip shows multiple individuals participating. Please identify them." I kept my voice flat. "I don't have names for you." She paused long enough for me to hear her tightening the noose. "We can deny for contributory negligence unless we understand the chain of events, Mr. Butler. Someone provided ignition sources. Someone violated property restrictions." I swallowed hard. I lit the grill. I hosted. I take full responsibility. It wasn't fully true, but it was fully mine, and I wasn't dragging anyone else down. She scribbled something I could almost hear, then said she'd note my position in a tone that felt like a threat disguised as paperwork. I hung up, wiped my palms on my jeans, and got back to bagging bolts. The clip had leaked wider. Campus gossip pages had grabbed it, slapped on a cute caption about Ojai BBQ gone nuclear, and the comments poured in. Half jokes, half knives. River told me not to read them. I read every single one. That Sunday's check-in with Dad felt different the moment I walked in. No red pen this time. No dissecting my mistakes like a frog in a school lab. Instead, he slid a printed sheet across the desk. "I will match each 1,000 you bank with 1,000, he said. "You show weekly progress, we keep going. You miss 2 weeks, it's over." He added another sheet, a checklist, hours signed by a supervisor, a budget with caps, a debt plan, and a savings line labeled restitution medical. That last word punched me. I stared at it, and he tapped the page. "You owe more than me." He was right, and we both knew it. From that day on, I pocketed every $5 bill like it was rare currency. Tips went into a separate envelope I guarded harder than my phone. Late-night parts runs turned into food deliveries when the shop got slow. I learned Ventura backstreets and shortcuts like I was prepping for a getaway. Every turn lane had its own trick. Every alley had an attitude. Nicole handled split shifts like they were nothing. Daylight under a car, nightlight under the street lamps with a delivery bag on her shoulder. Her phone lived on low power mode with a cracked screen she refused to replace. She worked like she was racing gravity. One night close to midnight, I came back sweaty and starving from a delivery run. Nicole was finishing torque specs on a Subaru, the only car left in the bay. She didn't look up when she asked, "Where are you sleeping these days?" I wiped my forehead. "ADU behind my dad's warehouse." "What's it like?" "Drafty, window rattles, forklift alarm goes off at dawn." She shrugged. "Beats a couch, beats nothing." I leaned against the doorway, watching her tighten a bolt with both hands. "My dad compares me to my dead brother. A lot." She didn't flinch. "People grieve sideways. Doesn't mean you're a ghost." Then she set down the wrench and pointed with her chin. "You missed a corner. Sweep it." No lecture, no pity. Just a job. The next morning I hadn't even clocked in before my phone buzzed again. This time a classmate. The text said, "If you give up the name of the idiot with fireworks, my dad stops breathing down my neck." He followed it with another. "You owe me, man." I stared at the screen, feeling that old heat rise in my chest. He wanted me to turn someone else into a shield, so he could dodge his own fallout. I didn't owe him a thing. I flipped the phone face down on the workbench and went back to bagging bolts. The metal bins clattered, and the noise felt cleaner than anything coming through my phone. Around noon, the adjuster called again. I stepped outside, leaning against the chain-link fence behind the shop, where the sun baked the metal until it stung my shoulder through my shirt. She said her team needed clarification on sequence of events. I said I had told her everything I could. She pushed. I pushed back. Then she said, "Mr. Butler, we are within our rights to deny entirely." I took a slow breath. "Then do what you have to do. I won't give you names." She didn't like that, and she let me hear it in her silence. But she hung up first. I slipped back into the shop, where the fans hummed like they could drown out anything. Kyle shouted for a parts pull in Bay 1. River tossed me a rag and said, "You look like you fought a fence and lost." "Phone call," I said. He nodded. "Then sweep something until it stops buzzing in your head." I did. That evening, I sat on the curb behind the shop with a warm Gatorade and watched forklifts roll across the lot like armored bugs. The heat radiated off the asphalt in slow waves. My hands smelled like solvent and cheap soap. For the first time in a long while, I felt the weight of keeping my mouth shut. Not as a burden, but as a choice. I didn't want to be the guy who threw anyone under the bus to save himself. I'd been enough of that guy already. Inside, Nicole slammed a tool drawer and called out, "You done hiding? Kyle wants that inventory sheet before close." I stood up and dusted off my jeans. The heat stuck to me, but the decision didn't. It fit clean. I walked back into the shop and pushed the door open with my shoulder, ready to work. The night ended quiet. Just the two of us shutting down the shop, lights going off one by one. Nicole grabbed her backpack and headed toward the lot with that same fast walk she always used when she didn't want to be asked anything. I jogged to catch up and said, "Hey, I can drive you." She was already halfway to the bus stop and didn't slow down. "If you want to help, be on time tomorrow." That was it. No thanks, no smile. Just a demand. I showed up the next night 10 minutes early, cleaned the workbench she used, and fixed the label on the parts bin she always complained about. She didn't mention it when she arrived, but she nodded once. That was enough. A few nights later, we ended up working the same food run. She told me she lived off Ventura Avenue. I drove her there and parked by a cracked curb outside a short building with rust on the stair rails and lights that buzzed louder than the street. She pointed to a second-story window. "That one. You want me to walk you up?" "No need. I've walked worse." She didn't complain, didn't explain, just slipped out of the car and disappeared through the front door, like it was no different than clocking out. That week, we started closing together more often. One night, she grabbed my notebook while we were waiting on a vendor pickup. She flipped through a few pages and snorted. "You track like a drunk accountant. It's organized chaos." She didn't laugh. She pulled out a pen and started drawing lines across my spreadsheet. "Weekly subtotals go here. Leaks go here." Then she circled a number in red. "Food is killing you." I looked at the line. $67 in tacos and gas station burritos. "Can you cook?" I shrugged. "I operate a microwave like a champ." She looked at me like I just said I still wet the bed. Then she dug in her bag and pulled out a pack of plastic measuring spoons. "Dollar bin. Don't lose them." That Sunday we both had off, and she texted, "If you're serious about budgeting, meet me at that cheap grocery store on Thompson. Bring your notebook." I got there early and watched her read labels like she was solving a crime. She held 2 cans of beans side by side, compared the unit prices, and put one back without a word. By the time we hit checkout, my cart looked like an app. Everything spaced, sorted, cheap, and clear. We drove back to the ADU, and she made a face when she saw my kitchen setup. "You own one pan?" "It's a good one. It's scratched to bits." She washed it anyway and pulled vegetables from a paper bag like it was a magic trick. I stood back while she chopped, stirred, and ran circles around me. I asked what we were making. She said, "Just follow directions." It turned out to be borscht. Purple, weird smelling, and somehow incredible. I ate 2 bowls and didn't even question it until the second one was gone. "Where'd you learn this?" I asked. "My dad. He taught me how to cook and change oil in the same month." Between chopping and stirring, I told her about Dominic, about how he was the older one, the deal closer, the one Dad always pointed to like a compass. Told her how he'd spin numbers in his head and sell you a loan over pancakes. She didn't look up while I talked, just nodded slowly. "Sounds like a good brother." I didn't expect that answer. I thought maybe she'd say something about pressure or expectations, but she didn't add more. She just let the air sit the way it needed to. After she left that night, I dug through an old duffel bag I hadn't touched since the fire. At the bottom was a cedar nameplate that used to sit on Dom's desk. The corner was scorched from the Ojai fire. I didn't even remember packing it. I ran my thumb along the blackened edge like it might tell me something. Later that week, she texted, "Do you have time Saturday? Bring that wood piece." She didn't give context, and I didn't ask. We drove out to Goleta that morning, windows down, radio off. The place was called Maker's Garage, half machine shop, half arts center. She had a punch card for it, like a regular. The guy at the desk nodded when he saw her. She brought the nameplate to a table with a laser engraver and loaded up a design file like she'd done it 100 times. I asked what she was putting on it. She didn't answer, just tapped keys. The machine buzzed to life and carved out each letter slowly, burning through the grain with a smell like campfire and glue. When it finished, I read the line, "Dominic Butler, do the work." Clean font. All uppercase. No flourish. I swallowed hard and ran my fingers across the fresh-cut grooves. "That's... wow." She nodded. "Now hang it where you clock in." I didn't say much after that. The ride back was quiet, but not in a bad way. She didn't need noise to fill space. She just existed in it like she had places to be that no one else could see. That night at the shop, I drilled a hole in the clipboard wall behind the time log and mounted the nameplate just above the punch clock. Every time I clocked in or out, I tapped it with my knuckles like a habit. Nobody asked about it. Nobody touched it. But I saw Nicole look at it once, and then look at me. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was chasing some version of myself I couldn't catch. I had just finished hanging the broom back on its hook when Kyle yelled for everyone to circle up. His voice had that clipped edge he only used when payroll or inventory went sideways. We crowded into Bay 1, the air thick with motor oil and heat, and he held up a printed invoice like it was a warrant. "A catalytic converter for a rare Lexus is missing," he said. "Invoice shows $1,460. Inventory says we had it. It's gone." His eyes landed on me like I'd already confessed. My stomach tightened. That shelf was my assignment. Kyle said, "When did you last scan that rack?" I flipped open my notebook so fast I almost tore the binding. "Friday at 11:38 at night. Logged it here." I held the page up like it might defend me. River stood behind me, arms crossed, jaw tight. He had come in Sunday for overtime. If anyone looked guilty by timing alone, it was him. His face said he knew it. Kyle scanned the group like he was daring someone to blink. "If anybody wants to fix this the easy way, now's the time." No one spoke. The only sound was a box fan rattling in the back. I swallowed hard. Then I remembered that wobbly dome camera above Bay 2. The one no one bothered checking because the feed recorded to some ancient local drive unless a collision triggered it. It was dumb luck I knew it still worked. "I can pull the camera files," I said. Kyle raised an eyebrow. "You think that thing still records?" "Worth a shot." He shrugged. "Be my guest. If it's dead, you're still on the hook for the log." I headed to the dusty office computer in the corner of the break room. The desktop hummed like it had arthritis. I clicked through folders until I found the auto-saved video loops, grainy, time-stamped, and choppy like they'd been filmed underwater. I scrubbed through hour after hour, my eyes burning as frames flickered by in gray-blue flashes. At 7:12 on Saturday morning, dead zone, no one scheduled, I saw movement. A figure in a gray hoodie walked straight into Bay 2, popped the parts cage with a key, slid a long rectangular box under a jacket, and hustled out the back door without hesitation. The stride was off, a slight hitch in the left leg, and on the visible hand was a tattoo across the knuckles. It wasn't River. It wasn't me. It wasn't anyone who had been standing in that circle. My heartbeat steadied. I backed the clip up, isolated the segment, and saved it to a thumb drive. When I walked back out to the bays, I did it slow on purpose, letting Kyle stew. He saw my face and snapped, "Well?" I plugged the drive into the shop TV by the tool chest and hit play. The room went silent except for the hum of the fans. When the figure limped across the screen, Kyle swore under his breath. "That's definitely Carlos," he muttered. "From Tires." Carlos was the quiet type who joked a lot about debt and car trouble. I barely knew him, but the limp was unmistakable. Kyle rubbed his temples like he was facing the part of the job he hated most. Then he called the owner. A half hour later, the owner, a heavyset guy named Warren, showed up still wearing his golf shirt. He watched the clip twice, paced once, and told Kyle to get Carlos in the break room. Carlos walked in from lunch holding a sandwich. When he saw the screen frozen on his hoodie, his shoulders sagged. He tried talking fast, said it was a mix-up, said he was borrowing the converter to match a client's part, said he planned to put it back, said he didn't take anything, then said nothing at all when the excuses ran dry. By the next morning, his name was off the schedule. Inventory got updated. The converter was logged as recovered cost. No cops, no drama, just a quiet removal and a short meeting in Warren's office. When I came in for my shift, Warren gave me a nod. Short, grounded, the kind that hit harder than a compliment. Kyle crossed his arms and muttered, "Cameras have been useless for years." Then the new kid starts taking notes and suddenly we're running a real security firm. River clapped me on the back hard enough to make me stumble. "I'm not saying told you so," he said, "but I'm definitely thinking it." I didn't have a comeback. I just felt something loosen in my chest, something I didn't realize had been tight since the fire, since Dad dropped me in that drafty ADU and told me to figure out my life. Later that night, after deliveries and wiping down the bays, I finally opened my notebook at the tiny table in the ADU. My hands still shook from the whole thing, not from fear, but from the shift in how it all felt. For the first time in a long while, I wasn't covering up, dodging blame, or taking the fall because it was easier than speaking up. I wrote the bonus income from Warren under the day's earnings. $120. A pizza slice they tossed in because no one wanted it. I circled the whole entry with a thick red pen and wrote one word next to it. Wins. I sat back, staring at that circle, letting it settle. It didn't feel like revenge, not even close. It felt like choosing the harder right instead of falling back into the mess I used to live in. It felt like clearing my own name for once instead of hoping someone else would do it. When I finished the entry, I snapped the notebook shut, stood up, and headed out to sweep the ADU steps. The night air smelled like diesel and salt water, and my hands were finally steady. I wasn't taking the hits anymore. I was hitting back. The day after Carlos vanished from the schedule, I sat at the metal table in the ADU, reorganizing my spreadsheet like it was a resume. I cleaned up the headers, made a color code for my shifts, highlighted gas spend in orange, food in yellow, and tips in green. Then I added a new column, Dad Matchable, and ran totals weekly. When you want Daxton Butler's money, you learn how to speak his language. By Sunday, I had exactly $1,003 banked from 3 weeks of parts runs, tip cash, bonus pay, and one night helping Kyle unload a vendor truck when their regular guy called out sick. I walked into the warehouse office at 3:59, notebook in one hand, printed spreadsheet in the other. Dad didn't look up right away. He waited until the clock hit 4. Then he took the sheet, read it line by line, and raised an eyebrow at the odd number. 1,003? Tips are messy, I said. He tapped his pen once, then pulled out his own sheet, filled a matching amount under his contract match line, and slid a receipt across the table like we were strangers sealing a real estate deal. No lectures, no red pen, no mention of Dominic. Instead, he asked, "What do you actually do at this shop, besides sweep floors and run tacos?" I listed it like a menu. Inventory checks, bay logs, vendor tracking, delivery logs, end-of-shift reconciliations, video timestamps, and lately barcode audits. He paused at that one. He asked, "Who taught you to log like that?" I said, "A girl named Nicole." He tilted his head just slightly. "Nicole, from the shop near the freeway?" I nodded. "Yeah, that one." He exhaled and half laughed, more surprise than amusement. "She's the one who keeps my old Porsche alive. That thing throws tantrums every 6 months and she walks it back from the dead. Smart kid. Gave me a discount I didn't ask for." I didn't respond. I just let it sit there. It hit me then. Next time I brought Nicole home, he'd already know her. Not through me, but through a service window. She was already someone in his world, and not because of me. That felt like a win in a language I'd never spoken. Later that week, Mariana dropped off a pot roast. I found it on the step with a foil cover and an index card folded under the pan lip. "Proud of you. Don't skip meals. M." I slid the card into my spreadsheet binder like it was a credential. Might as well have been a degree. Nicole and I started syncing our delivery shifts whenever we could. Nights in Ventura got soft around the edges. Windows down, quiet radio, insulated bags in the back seat. No need to fill every silence. No need to explain where we were going. I stopped trying to make her laugh. I just listened. She told me about her dad, Ben. Taught her cars on a driveway in Santa Paula. Used to fix neighbors' transmissions for beer money before he got knocked sideways by something medical with a long name she didn't want to say twice. Surgeries, rehab, a job that disappeared during recovery. His legs never came back the way they used to. She'd been carrying that bill like rent ever since. "Do you ever just forget to breathe?" she asked one night. "Only when I'm around my dad," I answered. That made her laugh. Not loud, just enough. I told her I wanted her to meet him one day, on purpose, not through a job or a coincidence. She snorted. "Then wear a clean shirt." At the ADU, I hung the cedar plaque above my time log clipboard, right where I couldn't ignore it. Every time I clocked in or out, I tapped it. Do the work. It was dumb. It was mine. At the next Sunday check-in, I walked in with a clearer sheet, sharper totals, and a timeline that didn't look like fiction. Dad read it slower this time, asked follow-ups, compared gas spending to hours worked, ran a finger down my food budget and nodded. Then he leaned back in his chair. "Internship season's coming. If you land one, what's your timeline?" I didn't flinch. "Start the Monday after finals." He studied my face like he was waiting for a flinch that never came. "Fair," he said, "but no shortcutting school to get there." "I'm not." He reached for his own binder and pulled out a fresh copy of the matching fund form. We filled it in line by line. He signed his initials with a pen that probably cost more than my laptop. It felt like the closest thing to a real contract we'd ever had. Later that week, I got a delivery run with Nicole that took us out to an address near the ocean. It was quiet, high-end, the kind of place with gates and names on plaques. As we waited in the car for the handoff, she looked over at me and asked, "Do you think you'd be doing any of this if the house hadn't burned?" I didn't answer fast. Then I said, "I think I'd still be coasting." "Now you're climbing?" I smirked. Still slipping, but yeah, climbing. The guy came out, signed for the parts, and tipped us $10. We split it down the middle. Back at the shop, I added $5 to my tip log and wrote "Paired Delivery Shift WN" in the notes column. The sheet looked cleaner than it ever had. I wasn't rich, I wasn't stable, but I was steady, and sometimes steady's the win. Ben had a bad spell in late May. Nicole came in late one night with a smudge of oil on her sleeve and a face that said, "Don't ask," so I didn't. But when she missed half her shift the next night and still didn't text, I drove to her place and waited outside until she walked down with that same calm expression she wore when everything was not calm at all. "Santa Barbara Clinic finally gave us a written plan," she said. 2 procedures. Rehab, 86,000 total. I blinked. "Like 86 grand?" She nodded once. "We need a deposit, or they bump him." Her voice didn't rise, didn't shake, just flat and steady like she was reading someone else's disaster off a clipboard. I asked how much she had saved. She said, 14,300, over 2 years. That number sat in the air like a dare. When I got back to the ADU, I opened my spreadsheet and ran every angle I could think of. Shifts, tips, bonus estimates, food cuts, walking instead of gas, maybe even skipping car insurance for a few months if I could get away with it. The math didn't lie. If I worked 7 days a week, pulled every tip possible, and lived like a ghost, I might crawl to 20,000 by fall. It wasn't enough. I pulled a plastic folder from the crate under my desk. Inside was the title to my Civic, bent at one corner, signed in my worst handwriting. It wasn't worth much, but it was mine. I called the clinic and asked to speak to billing. Told them I wasn't the patient, wasn't the family, but I had cash and a car title. The woman on the phone sounded surprised. She said they didn't usually deal in collateral, but she'd note it. That Sunday, I walked into Dad's office with a pitch deck printed 12-point, stapled tight. I sat down across from him, laid it flat, and slid it across like I was applying for a grant. Top page, ask, 25,000 match now, 25,000 conditional later. Below that, hours logged, projected savings, clinic estimate with deadlines, car title listed under personal assets. I don't want a rescue, I said. I want an investor. You match every thousand I save. We send the clinic a scheduled payment plan. I collateralize with my Civic and my current savings. He didn't speak. Just flipped through the pages, traced the numbers with his pen like he was trying to find the flaw. When he hit the spreadsheet summary, he paused and looked up. Who taught you to bring me a deck? I smiled. The shop and the world. He nodded slowly. Clinic needs a deposit by when? Friday. They'll hold the slot through the week. Then it's gone. His jaw shifted once like he was switching gears. You sure about the car? I'm not bluffing. If they asked for blood type, I'd give it. He nodded again, but this time it felt like Dad, not the CFO. I stood, took my binder, and walked out before he could say no. By Thursday morning, I had my $9,420 ready, tip cash, envelope money, one digital transfer I had to do from a gas station Wi-Fi because I couldn't hit my daily limit. I met Nicole at the bus stop, and we rode the 40 minutes to Santa Barbara mostly in silence. The clinic's billing office was cold and smelled like wet carpet. Nicole handed them her forms, then nodded for me to go next. I slid my envelope across the glass and unfolded a typed letter I'd signed that morning, offering my car title as collateral for the initial payment. The woman behind the counter blinked, then looked at Nicole, then looked back at me. You're not family? I'm on the file now, Nicole said. Authorized contact. He's handling part of the deposit. The woman typed something into the computer and said, Okay, we'll log the collateral as on file. Your cash posts today. Pending review of outside match. She printed a receipt, stamped it, and handed it to me like it might burn her fingers. Nicole took a picture of it right there and emailed a copy to her clinic contact. Her $14,300 stayed untouched for now, saved for rehab, meds, second stage costs that would bury us if we didn't plan ahead. We weren't celebrating, just surviving the first round. That afternoon, Dad asked us to stop by the house, bring Nicole if she was free. We walked into Dad's house like we'd done it before, like we weren't waiting to be judged. Nicole didn't hesitate. Mariana opened the door with a soft smile and pulled her in for a hug, without flinching at the smudges on her sleeves. It wasn't a grand welcome, just human, and somehow that mattered more. Dad was in the kitchen, leaning on the island with 2 mugs and a folder, like it was just another Tuesday. His face didn't shift much when he saw us, but his eyes landed on Nicole with quiet recognition. You've kept my Porsche on the road through 2 tantrums and 1 bad alternator, he said. I recognized you the second you walked in. Thank you. Nicole gave him a small smile and said, Discounts were my idea. He did a little double take and let out a low laugh. So you're the Nicole from Ventura, and you're with my son? She nodded. Yes, sir. He turned to look at me like the universe had finally pulled a good one, like fate had a punchline worth keeping. Then he slid the folder across the island. Inside was a signed letter to the Santa Barbara clinic, committing to the full $50,000 we'd laid out. 25 now, 25 on condition. Underneath was a typed note, investment terms, weekly updates, itemized receipts, and an outcomes report. Taped to the back was the payment confirmation, already posted that morning. I didn't say anything. I just watched Nicole's face, and then I watched Dad watching her. For once, I wasn't the center of the storm, and for once, I didn't want to be. Dinner was quiet but solid. No awkward silences. No questions disguised as traps. Just food, soft clinks of cutlery, and a table that didn't feel like a courtroom. After we cleared the plates, Dad asked me to step out back. The yard was neat, too neat, Every blade of grass felt planned. He crossed his arms and looked out like he was about to recite a quarterly report. "Adjuster's still pressing on the Ojai claim," he said. "If someone brought illegal fireworks and we can't pin it, they're going to push for full denial." I didn't stall. "I've got a line on the guy who posted the clip. Dylan. He sent me a smug DM after it blew up, trying to ride the wave. You think he'll cooperate? I think he likes attention more than secrets. I'll talk to him." Dad's voice dropped, firm but not angry. "Don't threaten. Get the truth." I nodded. The next day I met Dylan outside the library. He tried to play it slick, acted like he had some kind of leverage. I didn't flinch, didn't offer a deal. No favors, no money, no threats. "I'm not looking to stick this on you," I said. I already owned my part. The insurance company needs the full picture. That includes who lit the fireworks. He laughed like I was joking. Then I pulled out a printed draft of the statement I'd already sent to the adjuster, owning the grill, the party, and the bad decisions. No finger pointing. I handed it over. "That's what taking your part looks like." His face shifted, just slightly. He didn't answer right away, but 2 hours later I got a text. "Fine. I'll write it." He sent a short affidavit, one paragraph admitting he brought the fireworks, lit the one that hit the railing, and left right after the chaos started. I forwarded it straight to the adjuster. A week later, Dad got the call. Liability would be split. We wouldn't get a full payout, but we wouldn't get dropped either. It wasn't a victory, not in the clean sense, but it pulled the narrative out of "Alan ruins everything" and put it into "mistake with context." That Sunday we went back to Westlake for dinner. Same kitchen, same seats. After the dishes were cleared, Dad tapped his knuckles on the table. "One more thing." He opened a drawer and pulled out a small badge on a lanyard. It read, "Butler Capital, Analyst Intern." No mention of owner's son, no special color tag, just the role. Beside him stood a woman I'd only seen in passing before, Trin Pham, the COO. She shook my hand like she didn't care where I'd been or what I'd burned down. "You'll earn it," she said. "Don't be late." Finals had just wrapped. The timing fit like a gear clicking into place. Starting Monday, it was Butler Capital by day, the shop by night. For once, the split life didn't feel like a burden. It felt earned. 3 Fridays later, Ben went in for the first procedure. Nicole didn't say much that morning, just pulled her hoodie tight, tied her laces like she was suiting up for a fight, and met me at the bus stop like we were heading to war. We sat in the Santa Barbara waiting room in plastic chairs that squeaked every time you breathed. I watched the double doors like they owed us money. Nicole didn't pace. She didn't scroll her phone. She just sat with her hands clasped like a mechanic waiting on a stalled engine. The surgeon came out just past noon. His face said everything before his mouth did. "He's stable. It went well." Nicole didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She just let out a breath so deep it sounded like a pipe finally clearing. We bought 2 vending machine coffees that tasted like someone else's mistake, and it might as well have been a holiday. I worked the shop that night, didn't ask for time off, didn't want it. I pulled a shift in oil changes, ran a last-minute break order, and logged every minute. Then I went home, opened my laptop, and entered the hours like I was loading ammo. Butler Capital during the day wasn't glamorous, just spreadsheets, cash flow forecasts, and a million post-it notes that didn't mean anything until they did. But I got faster, tighter. I stopped apologizing for my math and started sending clean sheets before people asked. Even after I moved out of the ADU and into a small place in Ventura, a 1-bedroom with walls thin enough to hear your neighbor's blender, Dad kept our Sunday check-ins at the warehouse. Same room, same clipboard, less drama. He didn't raise his voice anymore. He didn't need to. I walked in ready, every time. River moved up to diagnostics. Nicole taught him how to calibrate sensors he used to curse out. Kyle finally learned how to say, "Nice catch," without sounding like he needed a drink after. The camera system got new wiring, motion triggers, a proper backup. Every part pull got logged twice, once in the system, once in the binder I'd rebuilt from scratch, and I still swept the floors, not because I had to, because I wanted to leave them clean. One night I walked into the shop after a late butler shift. Nicole was closing solo. I found her at the clipboard wall, thumb tracing the carved letters on the cedar plaque. "You hang this in a weird place," she said without turning around. I shrugged. "It hangs where I can't ignore it." The Ojai rebuild started moving. Drafts turned into blueprints. Dad sent me a mock-up, asked what I thought about the new deck layout. I told him I'd show up with a shovel if he needed one. He said, "We'll see," the same way he always did when he'd already decided yes. Nicole and I didn't do big speeches. We didn't make promises we had to write down. We made lists, split the tasks, knocked them down. She still did deliveries when she needed extra cash or thinking time. I still fixed whatever broke on my Civic with whatever tools I hadn't loaned out. At Butler, they gave me more. Not just numbers, real work. Review decks, meeting briefs, risk reports that made my head hurt at first and then started to click. I asked Trin once why she trusted me with it. She said, "You show up. That's rarer than you think." If you're looking for revenge in this story, here it is. I stopped being the joke people used to tell about me. I cleared my name when it mattered. I put in the work when it wasn't fun or clean, and the people who bet against me had to go find someone else to laugh at. One Sunday, after I finished the numbers early, Dad stood up from his desk and hugged me. No words at first. Just that solid, rare kind of hug that doesn't need fixing. Then he said, "You're not Dom. You're you. That's finally enough." I didn't dodge it. I didn't joke. I believed him. I clocked out, turned off the light, and went back to work. Before you head out, let me throw something at you. If you were in Alan's place, carrying someone else's future on your back, what would you have put on the line? If you've got hype, tap it to push this story to more people. And don't forget to subscribe and hit like. It means more than you think. Drop a comment too, even a quick, good story, and tell me what hit you hardest.
YouTube picked this for you. Tap it. Let's see if they guessed right.